Welcome back. This third tutorial is just going to introduce you guys to some of the simple geometric shapes you can create and some of the transformations you can do to those shapes. So let's start. So you know how the grid works. Let's turn our grid lock on. We then go over, just say I drew an angled line that goes like this, so you can see that my line joins to two grid points. Now I might decide that I want to move that line, it's not in the right spot. How do I move that line? Firstly, we click on it. Now it's not the most helpful thing, but unless you actually hover over the center of the transform bar, you can't actually move your object. So I'm clicking here, and as you can see, I'm trying to, firstly, even to select the object can be quite difficult. You actually need to select the entire object by left clicking, so you hold down the left click and you can select an entire object. If you select part of it, it still won't select it, or alternatively you can also click on the line if it's a line, or click on part of the object and it will help you. But again, if I try and left click now and move, it won't move my object. You must be hovered over the center to move your object. Now you can see at the moment it's hugging to my grid, which is fine, but if you want to be able to move it anywhere you want, you just turn off your grid lock and you can move it wherever you want. So you can see at the moment it's hugging to my grid lock, which is helpful most of the time. So you can see that. Now if I want to change the shape of that line, there's a couple of ways I can do it. Now if I left click and hold down, I can left click and transform my shape. Now you can see that it's not keeping the scale. So if you left click on your line that you've drawn and then left click again wherever you decide to drag it, it actually changes the scale. Now if you want to keep it in scale, which means the height and the width are within proportion, on any of the four corners you actually, instead of left clicking, you right click. So when you right click and drag, you can see now it doesn't matter where I drag it up and down, it's keeping that exact same shape for me. So again, if you have a go of that, holding the right click on your mouse button will make sure it keeps it in proportion, whereas when we do the left click, as I showed you before, you can see I can completely change the length, the width of my object, and they don't correlate to one another. So that's a very important thing to remember. When we move stuff, we grab the center. We also use the corners. If we want to keep the scale, we make sure we right click. Now if we want to flip the line that we can see there, we just press the flip button to flip it from the left to right or up from top to bottom. We also use that one. You've also got your rotate tool, which is over here. If for any reason you needed to rotate a shape, you can see here that it's actually rotating our line as well. So you can see that and hopefully have a go with that with 2D open. Now the next thing I wanted to show you was some of the shapes that aren't just lines. So you know you've got a line there. Now some of these things here, these buttons on the left, they have a visual symbol. They tell you what the main idea of the tool is, but you can also hold down the left mouse button and it gives you a whole bunch of different options within that one option. So you can see in my lines, there's all kinds of lines that you can draw. I've just used the basic one there. If I want a series of connected lines, using my grid point, you can see all I'm doing, left click, making sort of a stair-like illustration. You guys can have a go of that. Right click is also very important when you're doing multiple lines, as that ends a line that you've created. So again, you can see what happens when you hold down one. So for instance, at the moment, we are going to draw ourselves a circle. This one's called circle by center. It's hugging to my grid point so I can know exactly how large it is. And as I move out from my circle from the center point, it creates a circle to whatever size my grid's on. So you can see that there. Now, as I said, there's all kinds of circles. You can type in different things. You can, have intersecting ones. You can have tangents, all this kind of cool math stuff. But I don't actually get right into it. Now, arcs, again, same idea. There's all different ways you can draw your arcs, and it's worth you guys spending 5 or 10 minutes experimenting. I could say I want an arc, so if I right click, I could say I want an arc to go from there to my point up here, and then you can see as that changes the shape, it will determine what sort of arc that I have. So you can see you just play around with those ideas there. So I'm starting just to make some random shapes. There's all kinds of arcs that you can do. From endpoints, you can join things and yeah, it's just worth experimenting with and having a go. So there's all kinds of shapes you can do going through triangles, rectangles, and a lot of them you sort of click points and it will help create the shape for you. So you can see some of that. That's just basic. A lot of the geometric stuff you can do. You can have a lot of fun with that. Now, one of the good things though is when we have overlapping shapes and we need to create them one. And what that is called is the delete tool. Again, if you hold it down, you can see you can delete anything. You can delete part of an object. You can delete it by a box, by selecting a box. You can do it by a lasso or by a clipping path. So again, it's worth having a play with these. So at the moment, watch how it will delete the entire curve. If I want to just delete what we call the segment, so for instance, I want to get rid of this little curved part here, I just do that and it works out where the intersecting points are, as you can see here on my triangle. And sometimes we need to zoom in as well. And you can see how that helps connect our shapes there. So sometimes it's very important if you make some lines too long or they're not at the right size, you need to have a go at deleting and doing some trimming. So that's the delete toolbar as well. Now the last thing I just wanted to show you in this tutorial is how to control some of those measurements. I showed you before that, for instance, a line, if I know my grid's 5mm by 5mm, I know that if I count across half, 1, 1.5, 2, that's now a 2 centimeter line. Now if you look down so I'll create that line. Now if I select that line and then I go down, or what I want you to watch is down this section of the screen. So I will say relative, absolute, and it will give me a distance and an angle. So when I create a new line, it only happens when I create, you can see there, as I'm going across, hopefully you can see in the distance it says 40, so I know this is a 4 centimeter line. So instead of counting, because you don't want to do that all the time, you can see how far across it goes. Now if I drop it down 1 centimeter, it gives me an angle, and as well as that it says relative to where it started from, it's 4 centimeters long and it's dropped down 1 centimeter on my grid. So we know that it's actually got a centimeter drop, and you can watch those values change as I move it about. It will tell me my distance is at the moment 7.5, so it's 75 millimeters. I raise it up a centimeter, it tells me that, or a centimeter and a half. It's now 7.5 centimeters across and 2 centimeters up. So that's just helpful if you want to work out exactly how long a line is. Now once you've made your line, so for instance here, if I've made this line, I can see it's 4 centimeters, but if I forget, we can't just select on it, and I don't think it tells you how long our line actually is because all those values down the bottom are changing. So what we do is we get our Smart Dimension tool, which is up here. Again, there's all kinds of dimensions you can do, but the general idea is we say, I want from the end of that line, and I need to know the length, and it comes up there, and you can again play with how those arrows look. You can edit and change the size of your text, but usually in 2D design we only use it just to measure and check. We don't usually print off drawings like this because we're usually using it for the laser cutter or the vinyl cutter. So other than that, that's a good couple of minutes intro, I guess, to some of the basics of the geometric shapes, how to transform them, how to change them, how to trim them, delete them, measure them, and you've covered quite a lot of the basics there. So close this, have yourself a bit of an experiment and a bit of a play with some of those geometric shapes, having a go through all these different things that I've introduced you to, these tools on the left, and then you can move on to the next tutorial.